reduce the complexity of delivering an application. Also helps to service the developer, providing documentation, providing the proper credentials, providing the guidance and governance that needs the developers need to follow. Okay. So, what does the platform Apigee means to the API team or even to the developers itself? In this, we talk about breaking up Apigee platform in 2 layers. The bottom layer is where the runtime is. All the APIs. So in our context, an API is delivered with a bundle what we call proxies, which runs on API services. API services essentially means where the gateway is. The gateway along with the profiles, the policies, the keys bundle to support the app during runtime, and at the same time provides the integration to the backend. On the top side of the picture, we talk about management. So runtime is where traffic goes through the gateway, where the gateway gets the policies, the keys. The management layer is where API management really shines, because we talk about how do I manage hundreds and hundreds of APIs, right? How do I make sure that this management is scalable without scaling more people, right? So this is where we talk about management service. So what API is like user management, could be things like access management, it could be things like provision of keys into the system, could be providing things like proxies, versionings, etc. So we have the developer services, which is there's a UI where the API team or API development team could build APIs consuming backend. Analytic services is where it provides dashboard visibility to APIs. So one thing to note is for a successful API rollout, it's not just building an API. For a successful rollout of an API services, one must be able to understand the behavior of the API, the utilization of the API, and how is it performing. Because analytics service is one key service we feel is important because it provides feedback to the team, provides feedback to the developers. Need to know the state of the API they're using. And yes, there's a bunch of things that we focus on as well. On the right-hand side, API management is all about centralized management. Is actually more on full multi-tenant, because then how do I define and create isolation between teams, isolation between organizations or subsidiaries, right? API management also stresses on self-service, where the API first is actually important, where we look at things like API first means it's a discipline that has to be built into the teams with which the API teams or new services build. Today, in organizations today, API first must be something that is ingrained into application delivery. Every new systems or services that build or deliver online brings in has to have some API capability for the purpose of integration or purpose of consumption, right? So, and the rest of it is the properties include things like how do I support multi-deployment? So a choice of on-premise, a choice of cloud. I want to run on cloud, or even possible running on hybrid, because and larger organizations you might have heavy investment in my existing data center, but I'm also en route to adopting cloud, right? How do I harmonize these two environments with a single platform? So we talk about centralized governance, and this is where the hybrid model is actually key to centralize the management of API and centralize the management of security for API on a single platform. So we also look at things like cloud native, enterprise grade, and we have multiple gateways to cater to the needs of the enterprise. The gateways actually refers to the API services encompassing. So API, we talk about the technology brief. So just to stress a bit more is what does the app developers now with the API management platform in place generally will now interact with the portal. Why? Because the portal provides a means of accessing and searching for available API services, and as a means of understanding the services itself. And sometimes some of the APIs might have what we call a sandbox. So for an application developers, they need to understand how do I consume an API. They can use the sandbox as a means of understanding the initial usage of the API. They could even build applications around it. So generally, if you look at the hackathons around, some of the hackathons work on the basis of sandbox. So now I can actually generate and run a hackathon without stressing or putting extra load to my backend, because the developers who are in this catalog. And in order to scale in a hackathon context, the scaling factor is important because it could be thousands of developers coming in. The portal provides a means of any developers today coming in, understanding what the API is available, how do I use the API, etc., etc. So the developer portal is your gateway. It's actually the window for the app developers, for them to understand the services that is available today. So whatever goes through the API services that called API Edge, which is the gateway, there will be reports. Reports is really important for us at this point in time, because it's not just the technical team needs to understand the health of the API. Today, the businesses also need to, business side teams, right? Also likes to understand, what's the trend of an API services? What's the trend of the consumer? Who's using the API? Where are they from, etc. This is where the how do I consume an API? They can use the sandbox as a means of understanding the initial usage of the API. An API today is just for consumption, but you might be looking at how do I provide this API and charge, because this is where you start to generate revenues, right? On the right-hand side, where we talk about the mediation engine, because API will be useless if it doesn't talk to a system. So there's a bunch of mediation services that we provide, not just on security, but we talk about transformation, where you can do transformation of payload, transformation of headers, format, protocol, data protocol, to suit the backend system, right? So now your front end, your developer ecosystem focus on API. The backend system could be anything from a legacy system that talks only speaks lang to SOAP, but the experience that the developer ecosystem will get will only be just API. And Apigee actually sits in the middle, where it also supports multiple runtime formats. Just now we talked about it. And at the same time, the various out-of-the-box metrics that we provide today, like developer engagement metrics, some reporting and trending. So putting all this together on the security context that we talk about, on the left-hand side, the partner apps accessing the gateway through a proxy where what is the requirement, things like data security for 2SSL, for API key, for OAuth 2, which are all these are standard for any web or app developers today. Going into the management platform, we talk about threat protection, access control, and identity management. Because for threat protection, these are basic to regulate the request that the bank is running, the branches, definitely it doesn't want to infect the amount of call going back to. And we could even we even have a bot detection. And also the e-commerce site where some of mainly on, like, for example, understand what's the price and maybe I. So bot detection is where on detecting, you could even you can do two things. One is block the bot attack. So for on the access control side, there are API key validation, IP. So it's not just on the API consumption. The access control, it covers the entire platform. Going to the management UI, going to the portal, getting the keys, who's using that, who's able to do that. All these are role-based setup. Right? So on the data security side, if you are running on what we call a SaaS model, we even include things like PCI DSS, which is actually for credit card, HIPAA, which is for healthcare, and everything's encrypted within the cloud platform. So this is where we talk about the end-to-end encryption from starting from the users all the way to the backend. So this is where we try not to leave security to chances. Every single hops within the consumption of an API is secure through different mechanisms, from OAuth to MFA, within the users itself to access. We can even revoke key on demand at the developer layer, because sometimes we might by our consumer we detect some abnormal patterns. Like we want to kind of stop just one of the users. We could actually revoke or ban that key temporarily. But the thing is, by doing that, your existing partners continue to come in, right? So versus the traditional way of whitelisting, because IP could be spoofing, spoof, and IP could be shared across multiple groups within the same organization. So blocking a key or blocking access to a developer is much less damaging to blocking an entire IP, for example. We have kind of briefly described the entire API management platform, Apigee management platform. So one of our key differentiators is how do I manage API as an asset, and what is the life cycle around managing it, right? So now in Apigee, we have this concept of same thing. I think most of the vendors today also provide similar, but what we've got to look at is the entire API life cycle management. If you look at the life cycle, includes design, develop, secure, and if you scale, you have things like monitor, analyze, monetize, and feed back to the design. Why? Because the metrics that we get from the analyze or the analysis of the API dashboard provides feedback to improve or to enhance the existing API that's running. Or it could be things like it could be providing feedback and say that there are common patterns where APIs are generally used together, and why not that get combined and improve the experience. So that's where the analyze stage is one of the key important steps in operating the API management platform, because it provides a feedback loop back to the API team, and back to the application team, back to the API service delivery team. What to look out for, what to improve, and what to enhance. Because if you look at it, the whole API program is not just about development. The whole API program caters to multiple personas. We have the API developers, definitely they are building the APIs. We have the ops admin, right? You're putting up a platform today, who's going to manage it? What kind of tools are going to help provide the ops admin, so that having a new platform doesn't mean having new headaches or having new overhead, right? Product managers is where there are two kinds of product managers. So if you look at it from the business standpoint, they might want to deliver new service. How do I package? In traditional context, how do I bundle services together? In the new world, API program also caters to how do I bundle multiple APIs as a service that I can sell. For a bank, it would be a fintech. For the e-commerce, it could be my aggregator partners. For my delivery partners. For the healthcare, it could be my network of clinics. And for the travel insurance, travel will be how do I work with my airline, my partners, my hotel, and all those things. Right? This is where the product managers is important. You look at it from a holistic view, what are the services that the company provides today? How do I package this and sell it as a model to my partners? And you have things like the app developer, which is today the app developer becomes the customer of API, which is the API developer, because they will use and they demand, because they would like to use and interact with all the backend system as much as possible through an API. It simplifies their life. It provides a central entry point, and all the governance and security has been covered, as I mentioned earlier. At the same time, for the line of business, why line of business is part of the API program persona. We talk about product managers owning the platform, in taking charge of generating revenue. Line of business will be the one who's looking at what's my KPI, what's my strategy for my business today. Because that strategy or that vision will actually propagate down to what should the product manager be looking at and delivering. Right? Last but not least, of course, any platform that today sits in the internet, API as we mentioned, eventually all your APIs or API platform will be sitting in the internet, will be integrating and putting system together. CISO has to be there. CISO will be the one who's looking at CISO, or the compliance will be looking at do we have proper user control, access management, do we have proper visibility of who's using the API, do we have proper process of managing the keys, etc. So this is where the platform not only abstracts and aggregates what we mentioned earlier, the security, the scalability, and the analyze. And this is where the API management platform, along with the API program, brings together the organization for delivering a successful API program. So API management platform, as I mentioned, we talk about the technology brief. This is kind of a different view of what we look at in terms of the holistic capability. Right? So from a developer system, we talked about, earlier we mentioned about the API catalog. We also be delivering, we will deliver SDK, we will deliver API monetization. At the same time, the developer ecosystem, in order to develop the ecosystem, you should have what we call a marketplace. That means someone can subscribe, someone can request, or someone can actually generate a key, which is actually allows them to use the API. And they sometimes can actually pay for the usage of the API. So in order to support that, you have the API analytics, which actually look at things like providing all the different metrics And mediation engine is where you kind of provide that services to integration. And the runtime is where we look at the different form factor that we want to deliver the API with. So you mentioned the API catalog is where we talk about providing the visibility of the services available today. The runtime is where what we call run where your system or your system service need to be served. Right? You run if you need if your services are on-prem, you want to keep it on-prem. You have more form factor for that. If you have your services running on cloud or your main ecosystem partners are on cloud, right? We have on-cloud SaaS offering, along with support for different cloud providers as well. So hence, the whole hybrid strategy is where we bring onto the table where you could run your API management runtime anywhere, but we will be able to aggregate this management platform onto a single source. That helps to reduce the complexity, helps you to strengthen your governance model, and helps you to provide flexibility in terms of delivering your services in where your service provider is. So the complete life cycle looks at it this way. Right? So we will deep dive a bit more in terms of the life cycle itself. We talk about design and develop. Develop is all about looking at the open specification. So we do provide a UI for you to develop API, design API. So we talk about design. So we support things like Swagger, 2.0. So you have existing Swagger, you can actually generate APIs around that automatically. And sometimes you have a choice of whether do I develop or do I use out of the box. Right? So Apigee provides that capability as well. So the out of the box services that you can actually use it drag and drop. So they come in 4 different categories: traffic management, security, mediation, extension. Right. So all these are policies that you will be looking at later today or even tomorrow in the labs itself. Some of the policies that are being packaged as part of the platform. As part of the design develop, we also look at how do I centralize certain policies, a framework. We have concept of chat flow that helps to aggregate certain services to do things like encryption, logging, security, so that this concern is separated from the actual proxy, actual API is developed. So you have a consistent way of doing certain of these critical services, and you have it controlled. And it can actually apply without the intervention of the API developer. So as part of the development, we have an online tracing tool. So you could try and explore that during the lab later. Along with the out-of-the-box policies, we have services as pre-built for cloud consumption. So you look at it, we have a lot of this on Google Cloud. We have services that is on AWS as well. So what this means is this extension allows you to configure a resource that you want to consume in the cloud service cloud provider and use this resource as part of your API. So for the secure part, we have, as mentioned earlier, this is where we run through. So for publish, let's skip to publish. So for publish, we have what we focus very much on for publish is really on defining an API product and developing a API experience for the developer, because the product, there are two things, right? The great product is important for great API usage experience. A portal is important for a centralized means of accessing and understanding catalog. With that, it can actually give you the entire developer experience of using the API. And productization is simply of putting multiple APIs into a single product. Why is it important? Because a productization could mean I could bundle this for a group, and by bundling, I actually define the security context in terms of what keys to use, how to use, etc. And the portals, as I mentioned about earlier, is how do we make it self-service? Look at this particular portal that we have built for one customer, which is PayEasy. Today they deliver service for API for Apple phone, the wallet itself. And what they have done is provide a developer portal where on the right-hand side you could look at the documentation as a sandbox that you can try out and understand what the behavior of the API is. And last but not least, for the design part of it, we talk about the portal part of it is like publishes the monetization of API. How do I generate new business revenue through an API? Today I provide API today is not just giving a service. I actually am also trying to figure out, can I generate new business revenue? Can I for my partners and all this? And it's built out. So key thing to stress in monetization of APIs for us today is you can build an API today and you're not doing anything for monetization. For monetization of API on Apigee, it's just an add-on where you just turn it on and you can start to build bundles for your customer today. So this is how they scale the API program. And monitor, we have what we call the API service monitoring, and it provides the feedback loop in terms of what's my API looking at, what's the error code, how the error code are distributed, are we getting a lot of 500, are we getting about 400 or whatever. And this is security where this is important because the thing is, if you scale up, right, things like anti-patterns will arise. How do you develop APIs? Are all the APIs being built in a certain specification? Are they using the correct security policies? Are they following the same template? The compliance and the security reporting will provide that mechanism. At the same time, it also gives you things like who has changed, when it was changed, was it changed? So that change management reporting also helps to determine when the change was impacted. And if let's say there's a breach or compromise, you can know when this is it before or after the change has been done. Analyze is where we focus on reporting. We talk about dashboard a lot, and this is one of the key things. So dashboard is where we collect metrics. Every single API call goes through the API services. We'll capture all the metadata. There's no payload being captured as part of the platform, only metadata that will generate things like different kind of dashboard. We even have the what's called geomap. We might want to look at in terms of who are my consumer of the APIs today. Could be an app delivered by a Grab food developer, a food delivery platform. But you can actually use that information to tell who's coming using the APIs, and you actually get that additional information on the consumer, which is not your direct consumer, your partner's consumer who's using it. And last but not least, there's the scaling part of it where there are different form factors that Apigee runs on. We have SaaS, on-prem, multi-cloud strategy, where you can run on private cloud, you can run on microstrategy, or you can run on what's called hybrid today, which is actually common, where you have a data center, you have one or two cloud that you're running applications on. How do I aggregate this into a single control plane? Right? And for us, because if you're running on cloud as a SaaS platform, for us, you can actually run it on most of these data centers, which is all GCP, Google Clouds. And the most important thing is, if you want to scale, automation is the key. So we support, as part of the lifecycle, we also support the CI/CD of your choice, right? So if you look at the supported tool or platform that we do for CI/CD, right from GitLab, GitHub, which is the source code management, to Maven, which is the build engine. We also have a bunch of quality tools that we built, and like for example, JS Lint, you could build your own specification for policy scanners to give you the what we call the integrating with the SonarQube to understand the quality and any tech that we have incurred during developing this APIs as well. So yes, I think this is where we show our strength in terms of Apigee, because Apigee has always been a because what we do execute is where we look at the scale of the enterprise customer they work with. That's one thing. Second is the API program that we help customers to start off with having the capability not just on the platform, delivering the platform customer. We also come to the customer's help in terms of structuring the API program, getting the API program off the ground. What are the first 5 things you need to do within the next 6 weeks to build that API program? Okay? And there are a lot of materials on the web that we publish today for anyone to understand API management as a practice, API management, what should be doing, and what are the security contexts and concerns that we have published on this on the link that we can share later today, the cloud resources that all of my colleagues actually publish as part of their daily job, right? Okay. Thanks for your time attention for the past maybe 40-45 minutes, but we like to move on to the lab itself. So if you can go into, there's a link in this. So let me just go into the laptop here. So at GitHub, there's this link. You can go into this lab. And today we'll be focusing on 2 labs, right? So lab 1 is very much on building and creating API proxy. Lab 2 is how do I secure my API. So the first lab is where you build the basic API. And let me just quickly run through the labs itself so that you guys can kickstart that, right? So the use case is very simple. You'll be using a Swagger file. You'll be creating the API via the Swagger file. And what happens is as part of there's a screenshot that helps to guide. So this is the Swagger file that you import. And there will be a link down here. So this is the steps, the instruction where you go into the Apigee auth based on the trial account that you're signing up. So this is where you look at this link. And let me just open up this. So at this GitHub link, go to the instruction. Open up this. You will log into Apigee page. You will have you have to sign in through your account and follow the screenshot here that talks about, okay, creating the specification, import the URL. And do take note the URL is here for the Swagger. And there's a step-by-step guide that you can follow to generate the proxies. And last but not least, if you go through the guide, there is a way for you to test. There's a way for you to test the proxy as well. Okay? Maybe we will kickstart this lab, and it'll probably take about 10 minutes for the folks here. So if you have any issue, feel free to post your questions. My team will help to address. Maybe we'll start the lab. Go to this link, the login, and go to this module in GitHub, and go to the lab number 1 to start. Okay, thank you. We'll come back in 10 minutes.